awake. And when, oh, I'm just going to press OK there. Yeah, and when I've finished, I would really welcome any questions that you have. And so just jot them down as we go. So, okay. So I can't get it to. Okay, so I can't get this to change.
Yeah, we experienced something similar last time as well.
Mm.
Yeah.
Let me try again. No.
You enter.
Can we? I can't even get rid of it and start off completely. No. Can you, from your end, can you close the PowerPoint so I can open it again? I can't seem to do it from here. Ah, aha. Amazing. Okay, let's try. Let's give it a try. So I think if any of you know my work, you'll probably know me for large scale blue and white. And this is one of the early pieces I did in China. But I haven't always been painting, and I haven't always been working on quite such a large scale. I was educated in the UK, and my art education was in the UK. And I think my art aesthetic is very European. And oh no. So whoever magicked moving it on last time, can we try again? Ah, okay. So before the going to China, I was working on quite minimal sculptural form. This is probably large scale for UK ceramics. It's a meter in length and it's press molded with lots of inclusions of clay and porcelain and glass. So this is the sort of work that I was doing. And these also, again, floor-based, about 80, 90 centimeters across. And you can see they're very minimal. They're very refined surfaces, polished so that they're tactile. And that sensibility, that tactility has stayed with me throughout my career. I've always wanted to make things that are that should be touched, held, stroked, create an emotion between the viewer and the object. So at that time, this was in round about 2002, and this was my studio. It's an old chapel, very, very English architecture, Georgian, very simple. And you can see it's quite gloomy because England is usually grey, I'm afraid. We've actually have a sunny day today, but normally it's grey and drizzle. So that was then. And then in 2005, my husband, Takashi Yasuda, who's also a potter, was invited to go to China and set up the pottery workshop in Jingdezhen. And after 6 months, he said, "Come out. You will really like what's happening over here. You'll be really interested. It has lots of possibilities." And to start with, I was quite begrudging. I thought, I don't want to waste my time traveling across the world. I want to just be in my studio in the holidays. I was teaching full time then. But I thought, no, I should go and see what's happening. And this is what greeted me. Now, this is Shanghai. I got off the plane, and this is on the Bund. Now, if you were to go now, it's even more built up and even more lights and tall buildings and razzmatazz. It's quite extraordinary, Shanghai. But it completely, yeah, it blew my mind, and I just thought, oh, help. The cultural shock was quite different. I'd been to Europe, spent a lot of time in Europe and England, of course, easily countries are accessible, but I'd never been this far away. And I was just saying earlier, I've never been to India, but I imagine the cultural shock would be similar. So this is Jindagen. I'm showing you a little bit of background so that you can see how different it was for me. I took this about 2 years ago, and when I arrived, Jindagen was a bit of a backwater. It was everybody said, "Oh, the Wild West. It's cowboy land." It was very run down, very poor. But in the past 10 years, it's really developed and lots of new building. Not all very beautiful, I have to say. But there are beautiful places still. And this is on the way to the countryside in Jindagen. It's a dragon wall. And here, another very beautiful architecture by Pei, and it's the Imperial Kiln Museum. So what's happened with Jindagen is that it became very poor, and then the industry left, and the government put a lot of money into developing tourism and put a lot of money into making architectural statements, and this is one of them. And to a certain extent, that's really worked, and a lot of people now visit. But when I was first there, I have to say, it was I was quite. There was just a handful of foreigners. I was working out what I could do. I just thought, what can I do to this place? It's so different from my previous work. And then I saw this, and these are unfired deities moving by truck, being held by these boys, moving by truck to the kiln, and they were dodging all the wires. And you know, there were so many crazy situations like this. What struck me is the scale of these works. And there were lots of factories in Jindagen, all side by side in an area called the Sculpture Factory. And they're small family-run workshops, but they call them factories. All producing things for government and public buildings. And here, this was Mao, and these are life-size. Difficult to illustrate that, but again, I thought, wow, this is something special. I've never seen anything like this. And again, here, press molded in porcelain, large scale. So in England, I thought I'd been making work on quite a big scale, but it was nothing to what I was seeing here. And that made me want to embark on this journey of creating or fulfilling my need to work to scale, to really push the material. I really wanted to see what this magical Jindagen or Chinese porcelain could do. So again, there's a young me. This must have been 2006. Takeshi on the left-hand side. We discovered 2 or 3 what they call bigware factories making these traditional pots. I'm standing by the ones that are fired and painted and finished, and you can see they've shrunk And this magical porcelain, this is quite important for later on, it shrinks 20%. So what you think is huge suddenly becomes much more compact in every dimension. And so, but looking at this, I just thought, wow, how on earth do they make them? And they've always make these very tall, thin pots so that they can put a lot in the kiln, like soldiers lining up. And there's no kiln wastage, so it's more economical. So I thought, okay, I want to make things that aren't quite so upright, and I want to be able to. I knew I couldn't paint like this, but I thought I want to understand blue and white. So I went back home, and I went to the V&A and did a little bit of thinking and looking. Now, in the V&A, they've got a huge collection of ceramics and a room full of Chinese porcelain from the 18th and 17th century. Porcelain from that period was called white gold because it was traded with the West because we couldn't at that time create porcelain. And this magic white material was seen to be beautiful, and all the kings and queens wanted to possess this porcelain. And now much of it has found its way to museums. A lot of trading with both with England, Germany, and Holland in particular. But the other thing that I liked about this was that it was just blue, lots of tones of blue that made it very lively. And I loved the domestic scenes. Now, this was quite different from the Chinese traditional work, which was mainly dragons and mountains and countryside. This was made and painted for the European market. So there were people and plants and flowers and bits of furniture, pots and so on. And I really was quite excited about that. And it just stayed in my mind. So now I'm going to show you how things are made. Throwing bigware, they work in a team. And you get one lead thrower, that's the man with a naked top, and then his supporters that are supporting his hands, providing extra strength and weight. It is the most spectacular, and I wonder if I can show it again. It's like a really well choreographed ballet. It's just beautiful. They know what each other's doing. They know the strength. It's all done in silence. If they've got a radio on in the background, they often turn it off because they need the utmost concentration. And you can see in the photo on the right, the bunch of hands, just stunning, and that it just excited me, and I think it excites everybody that goes to China to see this. It's the bigware throwing. It's quite a spectacle. So what they're throwing are sections of the pot. They can't throw on a big scale. They can't throw the whole piece. So they throw in sections, and this is that section being moved outside to dry. They leave it in the sunshine. We'd never do that in England, but in China it seems to work absolutely fine. And then they lute all the sections together to create the pot form. After throwing, it's a nice, lovely picture. I caught them. These are their traditional fish bowls that they sell, and they're full of water, and they just wash down in those, and I just loved it. Many a time in the heat of the summer did I find myself in one of those. And then it came to me to think, okay, I can't paint dragons, but I want to learn to paint. I've never painted before. I've always drawn. Mark making's always been something that's important to me. And of course, I was brought up with, or my art school training was at the time of abstract expressionism coming from America. And I just felt, okay, I've got to go back to that time and just think about that mark making and that form of painting because it's what I know. I can't try to be something different. So I'm on the left is brushes that I made, and on the right are ones that I bought. That one with the black handle actually is probably 50 centimeters in length. It's a big, big brush. So these were very early mark making, just to loosen up and get myself sorted out. So on the left is ink. I don't do this now. I've got over. I can now paint straight away. And on the right, it's the blue, the cobalt blue. And on the left is the first pot. I just bought from them lots of simple cylinders and said, because they were cheaper to buy, I could buy them, if you like, they're off the peg. And I just thought, okay, just go for it. Just see what marks you make. And I just knew I had to hang on to the three tones, a very pale wash, a middle tone, and a darker tone. And you start with a pale and you build up with a middle, and then you articulate your drawing with the dark. And here I was scratching in. And then you can see on the right, 2019, I was still trying to, this was mountains for me. It was my version. And here on the right, I think I got a bit better. Although I quite like that, looking back, I quite like the madness of 2007. So I've got a series of images that show you the process, because I don't know about in India, but certainly it's very different than pottery making in the West, or certainly in England. So the man trimming here, the trimmer, are often they often go around different workshops and just trim. They're not dedicated to one workshop. They will move around. They are, if you like, top of the pecking order. They are seen as the most important because porcelain in China is very difficult to throw. So they will throw it. It's not very flexible. They will throw it very thickly and trim the shape. So there's a lot of trimming goes on. And as you can see, they're trimming it dry, which horrified me but I can't interfere with health and safety. That's their business. But they say it trims quicker and easier when it's dry. And they always also put the sections together when they're dry. They just slip around the edges and then just pop one section on top of another. And that's it. None of this fiddling around trying to make it glue and stick and fill with soft clay. It's like magic. It stays together. So in this picture, this is you can tell my hair's growing, so it must be after lockdown. This is a big piece, and you can see the different sections. Probably how many kilos of clay in probably 150 kilos of clay a section. So there'd be hollow sections, and then I will give them a measured drawing, and we'll work together to make sure I can't throw, obviously. I'm not strong enough, but I will guide through each of the different processes. And I did try to trim, but again, the pressure, the speed of the wheel trimming, and the pressure of that speed and holding the turning tool, just beyond my strength. It looks so easy, but it certainly isn't. So he will have an assistant. Trimmers always have an assistant who will sharpen all the tools and help the trimmer. So in the workshops in this family, I've been working with them for let me think now. It must be 18 or so years, and we've really got to know each other, and it's only now that I'm getting a lot of work made that, you know, we feel at ease, and I think they enjoy it, and I certainly love it, that relationship. It's amazing what you can communicate through scribbling and gesticulating and so on. So now it comes to the painting. So I'm just showing you, it looks absolutely mad, it looks absolutely crazy, but it's all fairly well thought out, and the soft tones, and then the final tone on the right with a very big brush goes on last. So that's the piece, and then that painted, it's on the right. So they only fire once in China. Maybe that's the same in India. I don't know. Partly because fuel is so expensive, but also on these big pieces, you can't biscuit fire. You just so when it's absolutely bone dry, it will be spray glazed. And there'll be two of us working, one to glaze it, and then I paint it immediately. It's glazed, and then it's fired. So this sort of mucky browny grey turns blue, as you know, cobalt turns blue in the firing. And that clay that looks brown when it's being made, it looks brown. The glaze will turn it to the most beautiful white porcelain. So it's in fact a clear glaze that goes on this work. And then just to finish this cycle of images, putting it in the kiln. The other wonderful thing about China that I love is I can get help. They all want to really help through the different processes. And moving these things about is not easy. So, and you can see from his shirt, it must be about 37, 38 degrees. It's really hot. It's not quite right. Got to come back, lift it up again. Yeah. So there's a lot of unemployment in China, and so a lot of these workers are they will work for 3 days and then they'll swap with someone else. And there's always plenty of people around. And before each process, I will work with an interpreter who works with our studio. Actually, our studio is called Red House, and we'll discuss each process and make sure everybody knows what they're doing and what I want and what they want, and so it's all fair and fair and square. So just a few pictures of painting to show it. I'm usually there in the summer because that's when I'm not teaching, but it's really hot in the summer. It's really exhausting. And here you can see I'm absolutely exhausted. This is a piece that's made in 3 parts and will be stacked together. So all that working out how they join, and which is normally I try and make a teapot type of lid fitting so that one slots inside the other. That all has to be worked out. And it's quite often it's new to the factory in China. So they're quite excited by the things that I do and what they can learn from it too. And here, absolutely mad picture of me. I'm so hot, and my hair's, I don't know, it's sort of slightly gone wild there. There we go. And then there's that human side of the family workshops. This one's a bit out in the countryside, and I was quite often painting with all these ducks and baby ducks and squawking around, and sometimes the dogs have puppies and there's hundreds of puppies running around. So it's totally different from England, the culture in England where everything's very precise and clean and organized. In China, I sort of actually rather like it. It's very casual and easygoing. You have to just get on with it, really. So there are all sorts of mark making that I do apart from painting, and it's all to do with trying to create an energy and a visual sensuality. So here are the 2 sorts of things that I've been doing. This was working towards, we're now jumping to 2024. I had a work exhibition at Kew Gardens in London, and they wanted tall pieces, big pieces to work with the environment, which is all trees around. So there we are. But it doesn't always go right, and that you just have to. Ceramics is who'd want to be a ceramics person? There's so many hazards at every stage, and you can open the kiln and it will be devastation like this. And quite often it will be devastation, not to my piece, but it will have knocked over the family work, which is the piece on the left. It all looks quite small pieces, but in fact they are huge. The piece that's collapsed was a 3-meter piece. So of course I will pay for anything that's damaged, but it's devastating, and we have to sit down and think, why did it happen? What was it the firing? Was it the clay? And at the moment, it's often the clay, certainly the pieces on the right, which weren't so big, they were only my height, failed because we think the clay seam was not good. They're running out of what they call big wear porcelain, that seam of clay. So it quite often gets mixed with a dud batch. But when it does go right, it's fantastic. And here is the family. They're naked, half naked, because it is, 38, 40 degrees, and they are working in the heat of the kiln environment. So lovely guys. These two are the brothers, and we call them the Buddha brothers. They have the factory together, and then a son-in-law as well. It's usually all family because they say if it's all family, it's easier to run. Everybody has a more allegiance if it's family. So this second section, is about another technique. So the first blue and white, that's a traditional Chinese technique that I'm interpreting in a personal way. I'm translating a traditional technique into a more contemporary vision. And this is another very old technique, which is called Fensai. And it's an on-glaze enamel, and it's water-based, and it's very old and rarely seen these days. I'm going to take you to, okay, I'll explain how it works. So here you can see it's all outlined in black, and you have a black oil-based enamel to make the outlines, and then you fill the color within the lines, so the lines hold the color in place. Otherwise, it would just run, it would just fall down, it would fall off. So it's held within quite thinly, it's applied quite thinly. And I discovered this, or thought about using it, because the plate on the right hand side I found in the market. There are lots of markets in Jindajian, and you can pick up things, and I just loved this. Again, it was like that very early blue and white I saw, with all the domestic objects and the pots and the flowers and the patterns, and then this historic example with the flowers and the pots again. And I just loved that, and I wanted to go and learn how to do it. So I took myself off to another factory. This one was making big Buddha figures for the temples. And I worked with a master Fensai painter there. And it was quite a funny experience, because he would show me and give me an area to paint, and then he'd come along and at the end of the day and say, yeah, very good, very good. And I would go off home thinking, oh, great, I'm getting better. And then I'd come back in the morning and look at it, and I'd think, wow, that really is quite good painting. I must have learned a lot. And then I realized that what was happening was that they were taking off all that I had painted the day before and repainted it in order that I could feel pleased. There's something about the mentality in a China, or certainly in the factories, that they always want you to feel, they always want to please you, to make you feel happy and that you've achieved something. So it was great, and in fact I learned quite quickly, sort of in that way, in that environment. So then it came to, well, what am I going to do with this Fensai? What am I going to paint? How am I going to work with patterns? And I'd only ever seen it on small pots. So the first thing I had to do was start developing tests in order to make it bigger. But I returned home, and it was summer, and I have a garden, and I love my garden, and I love flowers and plants. So it seemed natural for me to use that as my source material. So we've got Gaura on the left, and dahlias on the right. The English love dahlias. I think it's that jewel colour, and it seemed to suit the idea of Fensai, which has a jewel colour. So the first thing I had to do, Fensai historically has a palette of about 5 colours. So our studio, Red House, we set about developing a good palette, broadening our palette of color. And this is on the right, you can see all the tests, and on the left is the piece on your poster. But you can see on the pot on the left, I've started to work with circles. Again, I'm very aware I'm not Chinese. I'm investigating a Chinese process, but I've got to find a way that's personal to me. And the dots felt to me like pixelations in a print or a photograph. And I needed some way of holding the color. So it's the dots that are outlined in the black enamel that hold the watercolor enamel. Takes a little bit to get your head around it, but that's how it works. And it's become a sort of bit of a trademark, having the dots. And for the exhibition in Kew, I did what I loved doing, which was drawing tulips. In fact, the one on the right is by a French plant hunter of the 18th century, Pierre Redoute. And Kew Gardens have a fantastic collection of original prints and watercolor illustrations. And at the moment, they're showing the most beautiful collection of Indian watercolor drawings of plants. So it's really nice to see that and think how you can go across cultures and learn different things. So I was using that as a starting point to translate into designs for the Fensai. So I made this tulip pattern. And what you can see here is the black oil enamel outlining everything to hold the color in. And here it's being filled with the different Fensai colors. And you do this on, like any enamel, you do it onto an already glazed object. Now here I'm working on small pots, well, small for me. This is about 60 centimeters tall. And you can see when it's fires to about 790, quite temperamental. You have to be quite accurate. And the colors become much richer. Now, if I did every dot and filled every color in myself, I would go mad, I think. So I work with a lady who's worked with me now for about 18 years. No, about 16 years. We call her Mrs. Jiang. And she was trained as a painter for a government painter. That sounds odd, but the government would have workshops of painters and decorators and makers just producing things for the party, for the Communist Party. But that has all disappeared, and she didn't have a job. So I asked her to come and work with me, and she is very, very fast, and I'm very, very slow. And she's always telling me, "Oh, you're in my way, just draw it and leave." But she's very confident filling in. She's got to know what I like and what I don't like, and so on. So she will work with me. So I put this in because in England, I've also part of this, always prefer to have ownership over every part of the process of making. In China, that is rare. Even all the artists and sculptors will design and do certain bits of the process, but they will have things made in workshops, external workshops. So it's a much more team effort. It's a bit like architects will design, but they won't do everything, and bronze casters, and it's a very much an artisan way of working. And to start with, I felt really difficult. I felt uncomfortable asking her to do things, but now I realize it means that I can make a lot more stuff and move on and not get stuck with one idea. I can move more quickly, and it's more enjoyable. And here's different unfired in the process of being done on the right and fired on the left. So these pieces, I wonder if I'm going to move that down there. These pieces were made for Q from Plant Hunter drawings. One is the one on the right is the chrysanthemum, and it's very stylized, and the ones on the left are cyclamen. And there's many drawings, and so in the end I thought, how am I going to choose? And I thought, okay, I will choose plants that I grow in my garden that I really love. So the ones that I stylized and used originally come from my garden. So here's a bit of scale. So as far as I know, no one's worked with Fensai on this huge, quite big scale. You can see on the right, it's bigger than me. That's hibiscus. I know you probably have masses of hibiscus in India, but I just think they're joyous flowers, and it's make-believe colors. But there we go. I don't have a huge kiln, so things have to go up to another factory for firing. And that's quite common in China. You will make things in one place and go to another factory for glazing and then another factory for firing. So they're very used to moving stuff around. And here we're moving this unfired piece. And here with another pot, you can see they're going to take it 10 miles up the road, up very bumpy roads. And it's very clever. They've put this post in and tethered it down, a bit like a sort of fairground. And I just sort of close my eyes and just hope. And off it goes on its journey. And it will go at about that speed all the way. And the black car will is a sort of person that will go in front, and then someone else will drive behind. So it's just to make sure it's okay as it goes through the city. And then just to show that it worked, not all the ways, it doesn't always work, but you can see on the one on the right, that came out of the kiln fine. Sometimes I have to do a bit of restoration, but on the whole, it's fine. And it doesn't, when you make something and paint it and fire it, it doesn't stop there, especially with big things. You have to find ways or check before you send it anywhere that you know how. I'm going to turn this down a bit. That you know how to put it together, what equipment you need, and most importantly, whether the sections fit, because it's going up to nearly 1400 degrees. So everything will move and sometimes warp, and you have to make sure it all fits and it all goes together. And it's all done in a fairly casual way, no hard hats, no proper shoes. Anyway, you can see on the left, they put it all together. And all the time I'm working with them, just checking that I know where it's going, and we mark where it fits best so that when they get to England and they're put together, I can orientate them on the same axes. But in England, of course, it takes 3 times as long because of the health and safety and I mean, all good and great they do that, but it's a completely different ball game. But it's fascinating, that sort of cultural difference and how things are done and the approach. So in this exhibition I had at Kew, because I'm in education, it was very important to have an education room, and we did this series of photographs and had smaller pieces and got a bit of writing and such. And then inside was this room that we called the Forest of Porcelain. So you could walk round and feel the scale of the work, and it had a very strong emotional sense to it. And I'm sorry, I can't provide that for you. You can only understand that when you're actually walking through it and understanding porcelain on that scale. So you just have to believe me. It is quite an emotional thing, and a lot of people that walked through it wrote lovely things in the book, and a number of them, it made them cry, and so it must have, I think what I set out to do worked in some way or other. And there we are. That's finished, and just one short bit at the end here after that. It costs a lot of money to do this, to do what I'm doing. And right from the beginning, I've always said it's got to pay for itself. I've got to be realistic about this. I can't make things and it be just fun. I'm serious. It's my job, it's my work, and it's got to pay for itself. So if there's an opportunity to make things that I know will sell immediately, and also things that are of a scale that everyday people can buy, that really pleases me. So we made a series of cups here. I painted. They're all hand thrown and painted, and some lidded jars. And I've never painted in quantity before, but I loved it. By the time you get to the end, you're really fluent with the brush, and I quite like going from big scale to small scale. But there's also, obviously that doesn't make me a lot of money, and but so I do commissions, and I'm very lucky that I've had commissions all the way through. So I don't know the cost of or the exchange rate from Indian rupees to English pounds, but it costs me, if I do a shipment to the UK, the last shipment I did was £5,000, and that's before it goes through customs. So I've got to make a lot of money, and it costs a lot to produce, and I have to pay the different factories for helping me along the way. And that's really probably the most important thing for me, is to run it a little bit like a business. I'm making art, but I'm also being very businesslike. So commissions, and this is an early commission. You can see on the left, I'm working with collage to work out how to deal with the design, and then translating onto this pot's about my height again. And then things I look at, these 17th century still lifes, just for me, they're beautiful. And you can see on the one on the left, there's a bit of a Chinese plate that's obviously reached Holland at that time and is in the still life. But mad, but I love the particularness. I love, well, I love Indian miniature paintings, and I love this type of realism this in painting, and that has influenced my Fensai. So if I get a commission, I will look at what the subject's got to be, and here I'm looking at 1950s tableware. It was produced. It was called Homemaker in England, and it was, as you can tell, very, very 50s. All these objects, quite mad, floating around on this plate. And then on the right is a kimono material, again with sorts of just everyday objects, like a car thrown in and a train thrown in for good luck. But those sorts of things stay in my head when I see them, or I'll photograph them and keep them in a folder. And a few years ago, I had a commission for America, 2 pots, 2 pieces. Here, the one on the left waiting to be painted, and the one on the right painted. But they wanted domestic objects, so perfect. All these things that I loved painting and drawing, I could use. These are about, yeah, my height. And they're quite graphic against a lot of the other things. I've left the black and white and just coloured some of the pieces. And they wanted them for their one for the kitchen and one for their study area where their children worked, and the mother did her knitting and so on. You've got the anglepoise and the bowl of fruit. So that keeps me going. And then other things that keep me going is, again, going back to those domestic objects and pots. This Republic period in China. So not that, about 100 years ago. These quite extraordinary, they are Fensai, but not very dry Fensai. And again, this jumble of pots on pots and this unusual perspective. So my version of pots on pots is on the right-hand side. And then I'm influenced by things that I'm seeing around me. So in the workshop, here they are, they're all working on this big bowl, carving it. And so no single ownership, they'll all do their bit. One of them who's good at doing the dragons will do the dragons, and someone else who's good at doing flowers will do the flowers, and so on. And they move around the whole thing. And so I thought, okay, I've never carved. Let me give it a go. And so I produced these 2 small obelisks with carving. And I haven't glazed them. They've stayed white or just off-white. So low relief. And then 2 very different commissions. One for an English garden on the left, and you can see it must be an English garden because it's so green with all the rain, so lush. And one for an Asian family garden with the peonies and the butterflies. So big scale, trying to adapt, but always keeping my own voice, really. I think that's very important. And to be quite honest, I love doing commissions now. I didn't to start with, but I love doing them now, and it pushes my practice forward, makes me really think out of the box. And I sometimes we don't sell much in China, partly think the aesthetic is so different, and the price is problematic. But this was a school, and they wanted a piece for their library, so we went and put it up. And this piece is, I think you may or may not have seen this image. It's from Chatsworth House in Derbyshire. And sometimes, if I'm very lucky, I will sell a piece to a very nice space and they put it in a beautiful setting like that. But quite often I don't know where my pieces go. I work with a gallery in London and they never tell me. So that's how it is. And this is our workshop. This is in Jindagen in an area called Tao Tuan, who are always offering residencies if any of you are lucky enough to be able to do that. And it's in they're rejuvenated old factories, old ceramic factories that have been made into shops and a few into studios. You can see the old kiln chimneys. So it's a very particular architecture, and it's very sensitively refurbished. And then that's it. And I'll just show you this film. I always leave China with something that I want to come back to and do, something that's going to push me on to the next thing. And I wanted to not be painting. I wanted the color to be flooding color. It's very cold. This was at Christmas and it was hot in the summer and freezing in the winter. And it looks very easy, but I can tell you that trying to pour color is not easy. And there we go. So that's what I haven't even seen it come when it's been fired. I shall come back and fire it, and hopefully I will know then what to do next. There we go. Thank you very much. And I can't see any of you, but I hope there's someone out there that if you want to ask me questions, please do.
Yeah, that was brilliant. We have some questions in the message boxes. It says, is it one firing or this is done in two firings?
Okay, I'll just go to the chat then.
Yeah.
If I can. But shall I go to the beginning? I don't know. Oh, some nice, oh, lovely. When this will be possible in India? I don't know. Let me find a question. Is it one firing or is it done in two firings? First of all, the oil enamel and then the water enamel. Good question. It is, in fact, one firing. So it's a glaze firing first, clear glaze fired. So I'm putting it onto a fired surface like you would ordinary enamel. Then I'm doing the oil black line, and then the water-based enamel goes in and is held by the black line, and it's one firing. You cannot refire. I haven't found a way yet to, if I want to add something or change something, I haven't found a way to do a further firing. It just bubbles and boils to go in twice. So it's just one enamel firing. So glaze firing and then one enamel firing. Yeah. Oh, some lovely people, thank you. Any more questions down there? Are there still some small towns in China where one can go and work as long back? Jindagen, you can still work and it's relatively cheap. There are quite a few towns in China. There's one associated with Jindagen called Longchuan, and it's the center of Celadon, and it's spelt, let me see if I can spell it, Longchuan, Longchuan, and it's associated with Taoxuan, and they also have a residency. But quite often, if you're if you go on a residency and you go for a short time just to see what's what, like I did at the beginning, then you know what you want to do, and you can just go back with and rent a place to work. There are so many studios, and you don't need to pay for a residency. There's lots of ways of doing it. Yeah, I don't know whether that's I don't know if that's helped. What inspired and gave you the courage to master such huge works? Well, yeah, I think I'm slightly mad. I think that's what did it. Um, I've been working on in England what is thought of as those sculptures I showed you earlier, quite big for, in terms of ceramics. But when I saw what they could do in China, and I just thought I could see the potential, but it was only the pieces that I was looking at were only made for government buildings. There weren't many artists working or pushing the porcelain, and I thought that's something that I could do. It would be a wonderful challenge, and I think that gave me the courage. And I don't shy of hard work. I just worked and worked each. I've been doing this over 20 years, so it's not all been easy, but I sort of feel I know what I'm doing a bit now. So if you've got 20 years, go for it. Can I find oh, that's very nice things you're saying. Have I missed any questions there?
Is there any brand of enamel?
Sorry?
So Sona has asked that, can you please suggest the brand name of the enamel?
There is no brand name of the enamel. It's not something that you can just buy from a pottery supplies. It's called Fencai enamel, Fencai. But in China and Jinjigen, that it's like the cobalt. You don't buy it from pottery supplies. There is a people that you can buy it from, but on the whole, you go to places where it's produced, and it's produced for industry because they use it on a much bigger scale than artists would. So they produce it for industry. And once we've got the basic colors, we make it up ourselves. We do all the testing and creating the colors ourselves. As I'm sure you all know, pottery is not an easy life. It's a lot of hard work and a lot of good things, but also a lot of frustration as well. So we've developed this palette over time. Fortunately, I've got quite a good chemistry brain, so that's helped me quite a bit. But I do believe that if you look for in any German catalogs, maybe it will be on the internet, I think, I think you can buy a German brand because it's used in traditional German ceramics, and I'm trying to think what it's called. You might just have to look up on glaze enamel made in Germany or something like that, and see if you can find it. But the beauty of it for me is that it has a surface and a color change. It's like working with watercolor. It's not all flat. And often oil-based enamel, if you're painting a red oil base, it just goes on flat and it's not very exciting. But this moves and it's like painting with watercolor. Anything else?
Yeah, Shivika wants to know what temperature do you fire?
The Fensai I fire at about 790 centigrade. Oh yeah, what temperature?
Okay. I think that's all. Anyone has any more questions?
No, I think
Okay.
that looks like it.
Yeah. Thank you so
Well,
much.
thank you
Thank you,
for such lovely comments. And I can tell you it's very odd not seeing anybody. I can't see anybody.
Yeah, please put on your cameras, everyone. Let's
Yeah,
let Felicity see everyone.
I want to see you all.
Yeah.
No, everyone's too shy. Or maybe I need to go like that.
I don't
No,
know.
there's a
It's,
few. I can see a few of you.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Hello
thank
from
you.
all of us. And thank you so much.
You're very welcome and good luck. And maybe I will, if anyone manages to go over to India, a good starting place is to go to the pottery workshop because they will look after you and they have people that take you round, and it is expensive, but it's maybe a good starting point. And then you can always come and say hello. And our studio is called Red House, and it's in an area called Tao Shi Chuan. And I think Falingi is going over there in May, and so she will be able to tell anybody all sorts of things, all sorts of information.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I don't know that I can go from here, so I think you have to go first.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Bye bye then. Have a